Did you take a salt pill?
No, I didn't take one.
Can I help you?
No, I'm just cramping a bit.
I got you. Okay.
I'll be fine with a salt pill if somebody has one. Yep, at about mile 94 of a 108-mile epic ride from Winter Park, Florida to Tampa, Florida, I got a visit from an old friend that often visited upon cyclists the long ride companion leg cramps. But in order for us to really get into how we got here, we need to go back to the beginning of this story. I recently hopped on a 5-hour train ride from South Florida to Central Florida, the beautiful city of Winter Park to be exact, to join some of my friends from Central Florida cyclists on a cross-state or point-to-point excursion. Now, it is a given that I always relish an opportunity to escape the relatively flat roads, completely flat roads of South Florida, to enjoy the beautiful rolling terrain of Central Florida along with its incredible vistas, not to mention its very welcoming cycling community. Now, the way this whole thing started was I had been invited several times to do these point-to-point rides with some of the guys from Central Florida cycling. In fact, about 3 or 4 times a year, they'll do a destination ride where they'll leave Central Florida, maybe like ride from Winter Park to Tampa. They also have a ride where they'll go from Winter Park to Tallahassee, Jacksonville. And there's also a 2-day trip where they go from Winter Park to South Florida. And it's always been some sort of logistical snafu keeping me from being able to, do the ride. But this time I was locked in. So in this video, what I'm going to talk to you guys about is when it comes to long rides, the importance of preparation, nutrition, and then execution. So the ride was scheduled to leave Winter Park, Florida, bright and early, 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. That at 5:45, we were going to gather, do a brief equipment check, and then have a safety talk. Everything was set to go and in good hands. The ride leader is a friend of mine, Cedric Knight, who I like to think of as kind of like a ride logistics savant. When it comes to planning, Cedric doesn't just leave no stone unturned. He finds new ones and makes sure that there's no logistic impediment that's going to affect the ride. He does a masterful job of building up or ramping up everybody's mileage before the event, communicating clearly what the expectations of the ride are, does a masterful job of route planning. In fact, I'm a little envious of Cedric's route planning because I consider myself a pretty good route planner myself. But that's just local. Cedric actually evaluates the ride, the route, goes out and drives part of the route, rides part of the route just to make sure that we have absolutely no issues. Then he strategically sets up our sag support just to make sure that our breaks are timely and we're able to get everything we need in terms of our nutrition. My prep for the ride had been done in the last month or so, with me ramping up my Saturday miles from the typical 20 to 40 miles to doing 50, 60, ultimately 80 miles. The other thing that I did was I started cutting back on some of my midweek intense rides, preferring instead to rest my legs for the weekend. For example, on October 28th, I did a 60-mile ride. November 4th, 60 miles, November 11th, 50 miles plus 38 on a Sunday, which I typically don't ride on Sundays. And then on November 18th, I did my last long ride, which is an 80-miler to kind of like taper my fitness for the event. That Saturday morning, I met with 6 friends and we did an early morning ride beginning at 5:30. And we got in about almost 30 miles before we met up with a large group. And then we did the 47 or so miles with them. After we got back to the starting point of the ride, I rode back home and I had exactly 80 miles on the nose. I felt good. And at this point, I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready. So anybody who's ridden with me, spent any time on a bike with me, they know how I feel about long rides. In fact, I make no secret that I do not like being on a bike too much further than 3 hours, 4 hours. We start getting into 5 hours on a bike and I'm like, that's not my thing. I don't like long rides. And it's not that I don't enjoy them, but I do get bored. And the way how my mind works, it's like, okay, I am ready to get off the bike now. So these rides aren't just a physical challenge for me. They're also a mental challenge for me to be able to get through them. What usually bites me is me making sure that I get my nutrition right. In fact, that would be my Achilles heel. Oftentimes, I have an issue eating the night before a big ride, and especially in the morning. So when you compound the fact that I am away from home and starting the ride from a hotel, where it's going to be a little bit challenging to get up, get myself set, get out to the ride, and then be able to eat as well, that usually doesn't work very good for me. So I will try to get in what I can get into my body in the morning, but I also understand that I've got to start eating early and often on the ride to make sure that I don't fall behind in my nutrition. Did I succeed? I don't know. You have to stay tuned to the end of the video to actually find out. But suffice it to say, I had some sort of a working plan. I basically broke my nutrition into what I would need to eat the night before, what I would need to eat in the morning, and then to make sure that I had everything that I needed for the ride. In fact, what I did was from home, I made sure that I had all of the gels, all of the electrolytes, and breakfast bars, things like that, that I know that I would need to munch on throughout the ride. I also went to the grocery store the night before to get myself bananas and water. And then my pre-ride meal consisted of coffee, which was available in the hotel before I left. And I prepared protein power pancakes, some of my favorite pre-ride meals to have on my way to the ride. And that basically took care of my riding nutritional plan. The other consideration is the kit that I would wear, because it's 20 degrees cooler in Winter Park than at home, and we were expecting the weather to just warm very slightly throughout the day. Since we had a small bag in a SAG vehicle, I planned light layers that I could strip off throughout the ride, and it proved very effective in making sure that I was both comfortable and functional. The preparation of my bike, the only thing that I did was I swapped out the rear cassette, which I took off the 1123 that's normally on there, replaced it with an 1129. Over the 108 miles, we were expecting about 2,400 feet of elevation, which is not a lot for that distance, but the first part of the ride was to go through an area called Clermont, which is known for having very punchy climbs, and it's better to have and not need than to need and not have. So that was my philosophy with swapping out the cassette. I even, a first for me, uploaded the route map on my Garmin. I've never done that before, and it's kind of neat to get cued by it to say, and whatever number of feet you're getting ready to turn left. So that was neat. So that was preparation done and dusted. The final step to these long rides is the execution, and we're going to talk about 4 aspects: the rolling pace, the format, the routes, and the stops. Now, the rolling pace was going to be 21 miles an hour while we were rolling along on the flats. Of course, there's going to be speed creep sections where we get a tailwind and the speed may pick up, but the intention was to keep the speed under 21. The format was going to be a double pace line, and what we would do is that for the riders coming off the front, they would slide over to the left, form a single pace line, and slide backwards. So there would be periods of time where we might have 3 riders abreast, but for very short periods of time. And we compensated for that by making sure that we kept the group very tight. Now, we had a brisk roll out of town as we rode into the early dawn. Our first rest stop was scheduled to be at mile 24, which for me would be a little bit early, preferring instead to stop after maybe 30 or 40 miles. However, this proved very useful as it gave everyone an opportunity early on to pause and assess the early going. One of the things you'll find in Central Florida is a number of multi-use trails. The Van Fleet Trail, West Orange, and Withlahoochee, just to name a few. Some are interconnected or lead into rural roads, but they are all well maintained and prove ideal for avoiding some of the heavily traveled roadways in this part of the state. And about 10 miles into the ride, I begin executing my plan of eating early and often. On a ride like this, that is a small martial group, you should definitely take the opportunity to meet new folks on the bike. This is Kevin. He's an excellent wheel to follow, and I'm not just saying that because at 6'5" or 6'6" or 6'7", he towers over the entire group, but he's also a very strong, steady wheel with literally no surges. Pleasure to ride behind him. Most of the elevation we were going to encounter on this ride would come within the first 20 or 30 miles or so as we're going through Clermont, Florida, which is, again, very short, punchy climbs. And this is just one of those sections where we came through a section of rollers that really stung our legs. Certainly got Lily's attention. 40 miles into the ride, the weather has really warmed up. I'm probably at the next rest stop. I'll get out of this jacket. Pace has been good. It's supposed to be rolling at under 21, but we're actually hitting 23s, 24s. We got a tailwind, so that helps. Just getting used to riding with the guys in the group. So far, so good. Joining me on a ride from South Florida is my friend Lily, who found the early going a little bit tough, but adjusted well.
The beginning for, I don't know, a little tough.
The beginning was what?
A little tough. They were going fast at times, faster than
Advertised?
Yeah. But it's good with the rolling hills. Going down it helps.
Going downhill is good, yeah. Next up, we had a section of road that required Cedric to call an audible, all part of the game of planning and logistics.
Ken's gonna take the second group, so 4 behind Ken.
All 10 times on point-to-point rides, you're limited with the roadways that are available for you to traverse safely. One such roadway for us was Highway 33, which we were going to be on for 5 miles. It's frequented by semi-trailers and fast-moving vehicles. Cedric broke us up into groups of 5 to make it safer for us to get to the other side.
He's coming in.
I'm strong, so I get to have 6.
So for the next 5 miles, I'm going to settle in on Ken's wheel. We'll roll down at a brisk 21 to 22 miles an hour, being careful to not go too hard, but we also don't want to spend too much time on this roadway. So we're careful to keep it steady, call out debris as you'll often find on these types of roads. Our group of 5 is comprised of Ken, myself, Lily, Raphael, and Teresa. It did give me a great deal of joy to finally be off of that road, to be able to get on a nice country lane and relax a bit. Unbeknownst to us at the time, 2 of our companions stopped because Teresa had a flat.
Every time a truck came by. And what are you on, 60 millimeters? Your wheels?
Yes. Yeah, I was feeling a couple times. But
Yeah. A couple times I saw your bike just get like tossed to one side.
At this point, we would slow roll and wait for the rest of the group to arrive. But I was really looking forward to the prospects of being able to ride down this country road. Now we're getting ready to go down what looks to me like a nice country road. Here, you take a look at it. Okay. And the next rest stop is at mile marker
I ain't seen Roger pedal all day, man.
64.
He's saving like 50 watts just being on that way.
I ain't seen him pedal all day, man.
So far, so good. As expected, this road did not disappoint. Smooth with gentle bends and literally no cars. Now, while it looks flat, it really isn't. It offers probably the most subtle false flat I think I've ever been on. Rest stop number 3 came in at about mile 62. Now, while I was still feeling good, I was very mindful of my nutrition at this point of the ride. So I drank an entire bottle of electrolytes, had another banana, and an energy bar just for good measure. And with the next rest stop coming in at mile 90, this was going to represent the longest stretch of riding between breaks. So it's time to hunker down and pedal. A little bit of a running joke with the group is whenever they say, all right, let's roll, let's get going, it takes a couple minutes for them to, well, okay, not a couple minutes, but they don't just exactly snap to it. They kind of roll slow, get going slowly, even after we say, all right, guys, let's go. Shortly after that push, we had our final rest stop at mile 90, which would leave 18 short miles for the final push. While still cool, the temps definitely started warming up a bit. And despite my scheduled eating and not doing any hard efforts, I started feeling it in my legs a little bit. Now, my nutrition schedule for the ride was as follows. My plan was to have 1 water bottle every hour, a gel about every 30 miles, a banana between rest stops, and I would eat kind of like my made up peanut butter and jelly sandwich as needed. Now, I definitely fell behind my drinking schedule. Not that drinking, we'll take care of that later. And I definitely know that I did not eat enough. Those obviously are rookie mistakes, but remember what I said at the onset of the video. My Achilles heel when it comes to long rides is making sure that I eat enough, so much so that I even get anxiety about it at times. Now, the consequences were that I started bonking and I slowed down at one point to eat, which kind of was okay. It helped a little bit, but at about mile 94, I started cramping.
Did
you take a salt pill?
No, I didn't take one.
You want one when they pass?
You want help, bro? No, I'm just cramping a bit. I got you. Okay.
Now, as expected with this group, everyone was super supportive. Lily went into full mom nurse mode, and Brian was clutch with the push.
I'll be fine with the salt pill if somebody has one.
Salt pill?
Yeah.
I don't know, survive it. I see.
Those two.
Let me
Anybody
get
else?
one just in case
Just in case.
I cramp up.
This come with that thing.
That should add a little turbo to my...
No, this come with.
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's roll. Boys and girls and Jamie too.
Minerals are definitely essential to your riding. After having those 2 salt pills from Mr. Tavares, I think I felt better than I did all day. And yes, they were salt pills. But man, it was amazing. We were then able to finish the ride united and strong. Okay, so I've made it to Tampa, and yes, I know I'm salty. We completed the 108 miles. My Strava is actually saying 107 miles, but everybody else has got 108 and a half. It was a great ride, man. I'll do a proper debrief later on. I just wanted to say, ride's done. Everybody made it. No accidents or anything like that. Everybody's safe and we're good. RT, how was the ride for you today?
It was fantastic. Better than I deserved.
How long you been riding with CFC?
2 years.
Okay. And what's your favorite part of riding with CFC?
Oh, the people and the after party.
The after party?
Yeah, and the SAG. The SAG is the best. The SAG. No, and the SAG is the best ever.
The best it was.
Yeah.
And he's not saying that because she's right there.
There are a number of things to take into account whenever you do this type of ride, the least of which is the people. And even though I did know some of the guys, this was my first time meeting and riding with the vast majority of the crew. But I've got to say that their ability to make me feel like I was part of the crew, their sense of inclusiveness, their warmth and hospitality and support was first class all the way. That to me was the best aspect of this ride. Next would be the sense of adventure, the idea of riding from one place to another place and being able to take in the incredible views, and then the logistics, the planning, everything that Cedric did to make this ride and this experience seamless. Nothing was winged, was also amazing. And on that note, I've got to give a special shout out to the 2 ladies who did the SAG. They were amazing, super patient, very knowledgeable and supportive, and incredibly funny. That was another incredible aspect of this experience. What I'd like to know is, what has your experience been like doing these type of rides? What type of challenges do you have when you do a long ride, like a century or longer? And as always, thanks to you for continuing to support the channel by watching these videos, even this really long one, by commenting, subscribing, and sharing our content. As always, our aim here at the channel is to inform, instruct, inspire. Be blessed.